All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm out here in Monument, Colorado, and I'm here with one of the biggest characters in Flatland for me. Sometimes a lot of the guys don't get a lot of love, and one of the guys I wanted to give some love back on the website today is Todd Carter, one of the main guys behind AFA coming back, and also a man with a lot of history in Flatland. He's done it all, so I want to catch up with him today. So Todd, firstly, how you doing?
Doing well, Ephraim. Thanks so much for for letting me do this today. I appreciate it very much.
So, what a lot of people don't know is Todd's referred to as the nicest guy in Flatland, but as you're going to see real soon, there is a sinister side to you.
I've seen that today actually already.
Yeah,
so
that was
yes,
amazing.
Yes.
So, Todd, how long have you been riding for?
Been riding since about the summer of '85, so going on 32 years.
32 years. And what got you into flatland riding? I'm always interested, like, what gets people started in the game? How did you get into flatland?
Sure, that's a great question. Back in the day, there was only magazines. It was obviously before YouTube and the internet, so we were kind of left to look at pictures and kind of figure tricks out from there. And I saw some BMX Plus magazines. A couple of friends of mine were into racing, and we did try racing. I tried racing for a little bit as well, but was intrigued by this. I saw someone, Brian Skura, doing a surfer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
In BMX Plus?
In BMX Plus magazine. And then Ron Wilkerson doing a Miami Hopper. I can remember, a couple of other, Bob Harrow riding up a ramp and doing a kind of just a rollback, a fakey rollback back down, and those kinds of things, images kind of just clicked in my mind as something that I would at least like to explore, something I would like to try. Started investigating what it would take to ride. I started trying to learn tricks before I even really had a freestyle bike. At that time, I just had a regular BMX bike with some some axle pegs that we kind of threw on, and eventually was able to save enough money to get my first bike, GT Performer.
Oh wow!
Yeah, was super stoked on that.
Did you have threaded pegs? I remember I had threaded Skyway ones, and I look back and I'm like, how did I do anything on those pegs?
And they're so tiny and thin, and yeah, I used to strip them out and. Yep, that's what I started with.
And they were like shaped like a hexagon, as I remember.
Could get a wrench on them and get some torque, but boy, the threads were just strip out in no time.
So moving on. So you got into flatland. You got a GT Performer. Can you remember or recall your first flatland competition?
Oh, absolutely. My first flatland contest, and I totally geek out on this, but
that's fine. That's what I want to see.
January 28th.
Okay.
1986.
Wow, and what was it? AFA?
AFA contest in Columbus, Ohio, indoor, inside of a large kind of gymnasium, Thompson Recreation Center. Gary Pollock was there that day, so it was one of my first times seeing somebody go beyond what I even thought was probably possible on a bike. Gary was riding flatland and ramps at the time, but just a tremendous flatlander already in 1986. Had already been sponsored by CW. And I think he had a friend with him, Scott something or others. I can't remember his last name at the moment. But anyway, Scott was also a great rider. I can remember I was in the 13 and under novice class, and I think I got second place. I rode to Billy Idol. Rebel Yell.
Oh my God.
I know, heavy metal. I did Surfer. Did a Nori stand. I did a Gumby.
Oh, I remember learning those. Yeah. You did exactly the same as me. I started under 12s. I started on mine.
Yeah.
UK BFA. So that's pretty interesting. So one thing I never knew until yesterday was that we both rode for Hutch.
We did.
So take me through. Was that your first sponsor, Hutch?
It was. Yes.
So take me through to Hutch. What bike did you ride? How did you get hooked up?
Sure. Growing up in Ohio was part of a tremendous flatland scene, one of which I really think shaped, quite honestly, my life even to this day.
Wow.
yeah, tremendous people, and love connecting with those folks, and still connect with as many as I can today. But Randy Loop, who was the organizer and eventually became the AFA president, he was the organizer of our local chapter in Columbus, and began a series called the King of Flatland series.
Yeah.
And many other organizations or other chapters also started their King of Flatland series. Like, I know the Northeast had one as well. I think the South had one as well in the U.S. And we had, it was a series 5 months in a row, January through May, one contest each month. And your placings add up to the end of at the end of May. The person who wins that class had the option to sign on with Hutch. And Ron Stebbin was at the final event in May. And so it came down to I think I won 3 of 5, and I was battling some of my best friends at the time, Danny Ming, Sean Deckard. Gosh, I hate to name names and forget a few folks, but just like I said, a tremendous life-changing time for me going through all of that. And so I was able to win that sponsorship and signed with Hutch, and Ron was fantastic. So I got a Trickstar 2, which really was really big for me.
Yeah, me too.
Time, and really heavy. And so, honestly, it was a fantastic opportunity to ride with Hutch. You know, I got to do some shows that I never would have been connected with before outside of the Hutch umbrella. So it was a fantastic summer time. But I struggled to really be able to muscle that bike and to get around it as I had, because I was coming from a GT, much smaller at the time. But nonetheless...
And double top tube.
Yeah, double top tube.
With that crazy elevated chainstay thing.
Exactly.
What was that about? I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah. But it was, like I said, it was a fantastic experience for me. And Ron Stebbin, again, was great. Randy Loop really had his hands in that whole process to make give local riders in Ohio a chance to have some kind of stage.
Yeah, sure.
And just that platform, I've never forgotten that. And what a great organization and great time in my life, to be honest.
So I'm pretty jealous that you got to experience some of the AFA Masters. Some of my favourite, like you said, I'm sitting in England, buying every magazine and looking through the pages and going, I wonder, checking the results. And like, what are some of your favourite memories from the AFA Masters?
That's a great question, and I was tremendously blessed to be able to be a part of a number of the great contests. Columbus, Ohio, obviously sticks out for me because it was such a large event. I think I told you earlier today. I believe it started at 9 a.m. and at 11:30 or midnight is when it wrapped up. So judging all day.
Just one group.
Well, that was everybody. That was just the Flatland day. Ramps were the next day.
Okay.
But I had over 130 people in my class, I think, or something like that. But that was a great, both 87 and 88, those contests. Tucson, Arizona, I can remember riding in, the contest was great, but also great were parking garage jams that happened.
I can imagine. Jerry
Smith doing a hang 5 from the 5th level floor of the parking garage all the way out the bottom. So he was carving this hang 5 at crazy speeds all the way down the five floors. Perry Mervar in Wichita, Kansas, absolutely destroying a parking garage with so many new tricks that I hadn't seen, just probably 2 months of not seeing him ride. Of course, memories of traveling with Danny Ming and Frankie Arnwine.
Awesome.
Wonderful times. Bill Newman hanging out, James McGraw, hanging out events and doing well, which was such a high. And then also experienced not doing well, which is such a crushing blow, because back then there was no 2 runs. It was all or nothing.
Yeah. So
you go out and do your thing, and if you do well, you're so stoked. And if you don't do well...
But it's like that always, I think.
It is. And I still struggle with that from time to time, too. But Velodrome, I was able to experience the West Coast scene, which was kind of a dream for me.
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid in the Midwest in the U.S.
I bet.
So it was amazing to be able to go out and see some of the places and meet some of the riders that I probably would have ever met elsewise. So, just a fantastic time. Again, I keep pointing to it as it transitioned in Flatland was such a, not only an important thing, for physical, but I think just emotional health for me as well. Just to be able to forget about life's issues and problems and get on my bike and to ride and to not think about those kinds of things. And grew up in kind of a divorced home and great parents on both sides, but Flatland was just a stable source for me to be able to go out on my bike, and really, to be honest, still is. When I struggle in life with issues that come up, Flatland is still a thing for me that's a very healthy, cathartic kind of, gets me active, but also in addition to that, it just keeps my mind working properly, I think. So
yeah, it's good for the soul.
It really, that's a much better way to say it. Really is. I'm just so grateful.
It's cliche to say it, but
it is.
I realise that when I'm injured and I'm get back on the bike and I'm like, you could do any trick, it doesn't matter what it is, but you're happy to. You're like, this is what I missed.
Exactly.
Like, and you don't realise until you.
Every time I break, that's one of my fears. Now I've broken, a couple bones, an ankle, hands, those kinds of things. And as those, during the down times, the healing times, you're just, jonesing. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go crazy if I can't get back on my bike,
So, obviously the AFA Masters were really successful. What do you think Flatland in the modern era can learn from the era when it was definitely at its biggest?
Yeah. I was just talking to Will Red about this today, and I really think that one of the great points of interest from the AFA back in the day was the fact of the element of surprise. To show up, not at all expect, Diz Hicks to flip his bike upside down. Never even thought that was even possible. And then to see him do it and to pull it in his run. Nowadays, I think the challenge that we have is that, someone learns a trick like that in their backyard, they post it online. And so the element of surprise is gone. When you show up to a contest, it's rare, I think, to be genuinely shocked at, something new that someone's doing. It still happens occasionally, but not anything like it used to. And that was one of the, I think, huge draws to the AFA events, is that was sort of the meetup place to dream, and to see what others were doing, and to learn, quite honestly. And so the internet has changed how that works. I think one of the things that we can learn from that era is that, we were young at the time, but we didn't look at it as much like it was a must. I have to do well here, or I'm going to quit riding. It was like, this is so much fun. I can't wait to come back and do this again. If I do great, that's awesome. If I don't do well, I'm bummed, but I'm going to work harder next time. And I think sometimes, myself included, I get into my head too much in modern day, and I think it's all about the contest placing and not as much about the experience being there. So that's a learning that I think I'm still processing through, 30 plus years into the game. But I wish I could figure out a great solution for the element of surprise. I really do, because I miss that, showing up and seeing, somebody bust something that you would have never dreamed, and then your mind's blown, and you're like, do it again. I want to see it.
So fast forwarding on, you moved from Ohio out to Los Angeles, or the California area. So you can tell me where that is in a minute. But obviously, the Californian dream, how was that? Like, how long did you do that for? I remember I came out 5 years in a row for the Intricate Game, and we always hung out and sessioned. Talk a little bit about that, because Ohio, I imagine the winter's pretty horrible.
It's brutal, yeah.
Yeah, so the difference of just being able to ride every day and what that did for you and your experience in California.
Sure. I was blessed to be able to take a position, at a church in the Los Angeles area, northwest Los Angeles, and I was there 11 and a half years, and it was just again, kind of growing up in the Midwest, it was California dreaming for me always to be able to go out and visit as much as I could. And then when the opportunity presented itself to be able to live there, it was like a dream come true. And riding, I can remember, people think it's always sunny and warm in California. And it is a lot during the day, even in the winter. I mean, 60, 70 degrees, in December, January, which is awesome. But having to work during the day and then getting off work, and it gets dark at 4:35 p.m. Your evening session, finding a place that's well lit is sometimes a challenge because you've got very active parks. In addition to that, it does get chilly at night. I mean, I can remember sessions that were typically in the 40s Fahrenheit.
But that's bearable.
It is doable for sure. Much easier than riding in snow, and when you hit the ground and it's 20 degrees outside, man, it just hurts a lot more. So.
Oh yeah.
But I had some indoor spots in California. I met so many great people that I dearly care about, and just a fantastic scene that accepted me. When I came in, I think I was largely still probably doing a lot of tricks from late 80s, early 90s. Took an era of riding probably from 94 through maybe even 2006, where I didn't really progress much at all. I mean, I always had a bike, rode a few times a year, but busy with kids and working and those kinds of things where I could get to my bike and enjoy the session, but wasn't really moving forward. So they accepted me into the scene, and it was just I looked so forward to Saturdays because
was that the day?
It was a day that most of us could get together and ride, and it was not at all unusual to have 7-8 riders on a Saturday, sometimes up to 12, 15 riders.
That's rad.
And we busted at the Studio City spot, which is big enough to accommodate all those folks. Great spot. You've been there many times, and really enjoyed California. Love so many people there. My boys needed me back in the Midwest, so I'm
that
back
was going to
there.
be my next question.
Yeah.
So you moved back to Ohio, and a lot of people don't know this, but Bobby Carter asked me to ask you this, so I'm going to fire away with it.
Sure.
Not a lot of people do do not build their own flatland area. You did that. So take me through that. How do you build your own flatland area?
Well,
where was it?
It was basically, I bought an old house that came with a kind of a barn. I would describe it. Someone literally moved a barn from like a horse barn from a property somewhere in the country setting into like this small city where I live, just north of Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
So they moved it in a long time ago. I'm talking 50 plus years ago. So when I bought the place, it was dirt floor, the garage barn area.
But you knew what you were going to do with it.
That was the plan from the beginning. I was not going to buy a place that I couldn't ride somewhere. Yeah. So it was either a basement or a garage spot. And so it's a separate structure, kind of in the back of the house. Measurements measure out to about a 2.5 car garage. It's like a almost 25 feet spot by like 22, something like that. Not huge, but it's enough to ride in the winter. And so I contacted a concrete contractor. I found the guy who actually did a local skate park. Kind of did some research. I loved what he did at the skate park in terms of the texturing and how fast the pour was. So I contacted him, explained, this is not really a garage floor. I don't want it to be shiny. I don't want it to, of course it could...
You want a grip to it.
I want a grip to it, but exactly. And so it's not your traditional garage pour. And so he understood right away because he'd done skate parks before, kind of what I wanted. And,
cool.
And he took a laser level, came in and poured, marked the lines where he needed to fill up to, and was like super paid a lot of attention, really close attention to detail. to get it exactly right, and he did a fantastic job. It's a great, super flat area. Again, has no drain space. Anything. I was like, no, I don't want any of that. It's just basically it's a spot to ride my bike. So.
Yeah, it always interests me, like flatland areas and how it shapes people's riding. So I noticed that you do like the whiplashes, like the 6 you did yesterday. You do them in a circle because of the spot you have, which works well for contests too, because big contest areas are rare, although the AFA do encourage that.
Yes. If we can have a large spot, that's fantastic, but sometimes it's just not possible. We just did a stop in Tucson in October, and it was a kind of a break between ramps inside of a skate park. Good floor, not huge, but riders, can adapt pretty easily, it seems, these days. But yes, it's good contest preparation. At times I wish it were larger, of course, but I was able to install a heater in there, so it's.
I was going to ask you that, because does it get condensation or not?
Never had condensation.
Just dry winters, but snowy.
Yeah, it snows a lot in Ohio, but I've never had it. It's never been cold enough to have condensation on the floor, and it's not a smooth, shiny type of polished concrete. It's more like a slab type of texture. So it's very unusual. It's almost like an outdoor texture for an indoor spot. But yeah, I have a heater in there, and it does a pretty decent job. And I have good lights.
Yeah.
Which makes a huge difference in the winter when it gets dark. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know music plays a big part in. Probably comes from the AFA culture. You pay attention to what people ride to. I always noticed at the events, you're like, this guy rode to this, like the same as what I do. I think it's a generational thing. So what kind of music are you into?
I love, and I probably will age myself a little bit for saying this, but I love new wave. Shout out to Ron Monis. New wave music. I like a lot of English bands. It's kind of probably my my favorite.
Manchester sound, right?
I love that. Yeah. I ride kind of. My style has always been slow, kind of slow and controlled and methodicals. I tried for years to change that too, that it just wasn't me. I would learn something slow, and for whatever reason, that's just who I am. So I just embraced it a few years back and just said, forget it. I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
And do my tricks, and I'm slow. So I usually ride to. It's kind of actually a little different. When I go to a contest, if I have the option of riding to something different, I usually do, because my style. It's difficult for me to ride to really like hard driving, beat per minute songs.
Yeah.
I usually try to break it down a little bit for my runs. Sometimes it works well. Sometimes it does not work in the flow of the event, and I feel kind of odd.
Yeah, I always found if you ride to your favourite song, it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because if they mess your music up,
which has happened to me.
It seems to happen a lot.
Yeah, that's happened to me before too. So yeah, you're right. You're in a headspace and you're expecting something and it doesn't happen, and then you're all
like,
flustered.
Wait, this isn't the song.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, obviously, moving on, we're out here battling the Rockies 2017, and you're instrumental in the AFA coming back. So, tell me a little bit from your perspective about the AFA and why you brought it back, and what your intentions and what you think you bring to the AFA.
Absolutely. Well, I share from kind of my personal experience. Again, growing up, going to grassroots contests were sort of got me through my middle school and high school life. Looking forward to the next contest or event, to see my friends and to ride and to have fun. And so I think part of the goal of the AFA is to try to reconnect with that grassroots feeling of, where can we go to have a contest so people can come out and ride and compete and show their new tricks and have fun, just to provide kind of a platform for folks to be able to share and meet and grow. So again, I had such a fantastic experience as a young teenager, moving all the way up, 20s and 30s, competing and just sharing that common Flatland experience that I'd like the AFA to kind of that be one of the goals. just to create a experience that people can count on and say, hey, let's go out and compete and just have fun and enjoy it. And sometimes it's not really close enough to be able to make that happen. But the goal is to try to get around at least to the U.S., at least 1 or 2 spots that, someone could be able to make it out to. Because let's face it, Flatland it doesn't have the numbers that it used to, where we could, have a incredible scene in the Northeast, an incredible scene in Ohio, for example. Back in the late 80s, there were 2 two AFA chapters just in Ohio.
Wow.
So they had their own contests, and I used to go to sometimes split the difference and go to both Columbus and Cleveland events. So just to give you kind of a perspective. And now there aren't as many, obviously, organizations or contests or events. And so we're hoping just to dig into that common experience a bit, and just to create a place where people can share and grow and continue to push each other.
So also, that's great, Todd. You have 2 sons that ride.
I do.
I remember meeting them at the Guru Jam. Both threw down flawless runs. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you get your sons into riding? Was that just a natural? They saw you and got into it. And
it really is. They've grown up with Dad always having a bike, and in fact, I think my youngest son went to a friend's house once and asked where his dad's bike was, because he just thought that was normal. Every dad has a bike.
Wow.
So so for them, it's just been a part of our life. I got them bikes early. They both learned, and it's just been a way for us to connect over the years, to ride together. And they still ride. They have many interests, and which I encourage. And we go out. They'll ride maybe a couple times, every 3 months or something like that. And when they do, we have fun. And there's no pressure. I don't put pressure on them to learn this or that, and give them freedom to just enjoy riding. And they do. And they've made great friends. I think sometimes they have more Instagram followers and Facebook followers from Flatland than I do, because they're young and fun to watch. Yeah. And so, but for them, it's pure, it's fun, and I'm so thankful for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. And also, I wanted to touch on this. I just interviewed James McGraw, and you couldn't have 2 different characters than you and James. Like,
Yeah.
how do you deal with James?
Well, James and I, we go back
and how
30 plus years.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, James and I met at. He was from the Detroit area and used to come down to the contests and the AFA contests in Columbus, Ohio, and so we met there, and became friends, and traveled to contests together over the years, and did shows together. I remember cheering him on tremendously when he was the scooter champion, and used to get 6 foot out on quarter pipes on that scooter. He would take off running as fast as he could, and then jump on in air. Crazy.
The scooter king.
Yeah, for real. It was crazy. And I remember James in so many. He actually kind of. I don't know how he does it. He has this ability that when he goes out for a run or a show, even if he's totally fallen apart in practice, he can pull it together.
Yeah, he does it every time.
He does.
Every year I come out here.
Ephraim, he's been doing that for 30 years. He's been doing that since he was 13 years old.
That's amazing.
It is, and I've been there to see it, and I see it over and over again, and it's something I really admire actually in James, is that man, he's got this uncanny ability to focus. He's a dreamer too, which I like, and I think that I love his parents, his family. I can't say enough great things about our friendship over the years, and it's a privilege, honestly, to kind of still hang out with him. And our kids know each other. We traveled together with our kids to contests, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Jams.
Priceless.
It is. It really is super cool, and I'm just grateful to be able to be a small part of the AFA, and grateful for our relationship with James too. Yeah.
So I remember, young kid in England, I'd always see your name in the expert class, and talk about the transition between expert and then turning pro.
Oh man, that's been brutal for me. Yeah.
So let's begin at expert. How did you find that?
Well, in terms of recent years, expert
Yeah.
class, yeah. Well, I began competing again with the Am Flat series, which I think was a fantastic thing for the U.S., giving riders again a venue to come out, and it got me reconnected to progression,
Yeah.
and really reminded me of why I do what I do.
Yeah.
And so I sort of began entering the expert class and was able to do well there a number of times, where I won the year end a couple of years, and won a number of the contests, and it just became not so much external pressure from other people, but more internal pressure for me, that I don't know that it's totally fair for me to stay there and not give an opportunity for other people to move into that spot.
Yeah.
There was also, I wanted to push myself to do something else, and so there was no longer a master class kind of option for a rider such as myself. And so I kind of moved up to pro 2 years ago, and my first pro contest was in Toronto, and I actually got fifth. And I got a little bit of money, and I was really happy with how I did. And since then, it's just been terrible. I've not done well at all. And most of that has just been, I just have not I've not ridden well since in the pro class since, to be honest. But I'm still going. Still, I do enjoy it. I do have fun, even when it's frustrating. It's still fun for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask what's your motivation, and if you're,
Yeah.
if you've gone from winning to fifth, and then you're like, hang on,
Almost last. I've gotten last several times as well. Motivation is probably self-motivation. I realize that at my age and the state of my career, I'm not going to be a Matthias. I'm not going to be a super pro level, and I'm stoked for them. And I think it's awesome to watch them, and I'm in awe. To watch Dub ride is really amazing. I just want to keep being a better part of me, better version of me, and I think I've got some time left. Fortunately, I'm still fairly healthy, and I can't think of wasting that time that I have left to ride and not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
So I wasted
That's a
too
good
many
way to
years.
look at it, yeah.
I wasted way too many years. Just kind of taking it easy. Resting on what I'd done in the past, and I'm not about that anymore. I gotta keep pushing forward. So that's what I'm doing.
So that's a good way to ask the next question. What are your plans for next year?
Well, I'd love to, continue to be part of the AFA. I'd love to hit up more series as opportunity presents itself. I'd love to travel to. I hear through the grapevine that there's a contest in England.
Yeah, there's a couple of big ones coming up.
So
stay tuned for that.
Exactly. So I'd love to be able to hit up some of those. I've never been able to travel outside of North America for contests, and I'd love to be able to do that and to feel good about my riding. So that's probably a goal for me. So it isn't a contest placement, it's to be able to push myself to a better place and to do the best that I can. So, and I'm not there right now, so I need to keep pushing.
So I think you're a good role model for a lot of Flatlanders in the game. Like, a lot of people look to you. I don't know if you realise that, but you're always really calm and project a good image, which I think is really important for the modern day, what I call pro rider responsibility. What would be your advice to a Flatland rider that's perhaps looking at this for the first time on Flatmatters and is thinking, how do I do this?
Sure.
And
well, I think for me it was you start in Flatland as building blocks. It's kind of like Legos. So you start, it may not be the trick that you want to have in the end game, but you learn a trick, another trick builds upon that trick, then a third trick builds upon those three. So I think for me, and I tell my boys this, and they don't like hearing it, but learn everything, learn as much as you can, learn it right-footed, left-footed, right side of the bike, left side of the bike, because you never know when those skills are going to come into play for the next set of tricks. And that's one thing that I could tell for somebody that's coming in. It's really difficult and kind of overwhelming to look at a super pro rider and think that I could ever do that, because it's sometimes difficult to even understand, what I just saw. But I think that there are resources out there for beginner tricks. Matt Wilhelm has some great resources for beginner kinds of tricks. And the great thing about the Flatland community is that we're very accessible these days with social media. So I would say, honestly, if somebody's watching and there's like, how can I get connected to Flatland? Reach out to me. Reach out to Ephraim. I would gladly help any steps in that process. And we've been there, and folks that have been riding for even a year or more could give helpful tips on what things to start with. I recommend people start with brakes.
Yeah, of course.
To learn how to just bike control. It just gives you the ability to stop and start, and a lot more trick options at the beginning. So again, I'm available. I'm accessible, and there's so many Flatland riders that are. That's one of the many great things about our community.
All right, Todd, let's wrap this up. Any final thanks that you'd like to do for this interview?
Well, I just want to thank you for all you do each day. Honestly, I read Flatmatters every day, and it's hugely important just for motivation. And I quite honestly would probably miss a lot if you didn't do what you do. So thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you so much to all of the riders who support not only the AFA, of course the AFA, but outside of that, all contests and events and jams, and are working toward just creating, again, community events for folks in Flatland. We're not huge, but we are strong. So I think that as long as we keep moving forward, we're going to continue to get there and continue to be blessed. So thank you very much for the chance to talk.
It's been great catching up with Todd, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Todd does this weekend at Battle in the Rockies. And we're out. Peace.